Pastor Jagjivan, please maybe get headphones. If maybe you will get better voice then.
Yeah, now I can hear.
Okay, okay.
Now I can hear.
So okay, okay. Now you can. Now you can close your mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So is my screen visible to everyone? Yeah. Every day I'm having this problem with Skype. I don't know what is this problem. Okay. Do you see my screen? Lord have mercy. Okay. Thank you for confirming. I think it's better to open the mic and tell because yes, I don't know why this problem is happening with me. Anyways, let's start.
Yes, we can see everything properly. So,
Yeah, thank you, thank you. So as you can see on the screen, today's topic is about the veneration of saints, icons, and relics, which is one of the point of contention between the Orthodox and the non-Orthodox, especially from the and every one of us know that in the Orthodox Church we highly regard our saints and their icons and their relics, and we venerate. That means we honor them highly. It's not just an object of some history or to keep in museums. It's an object. These are the objects. For example, I'm talking about the icons and relics. These are the objects which we honor because they confer grace. God uses those objects to confer His grace to His people. So anyway, we will go from saints to then to icons and then to relics, and why and let's see those the biblical reasons for having that kind of veneration in the Orthodox Church. So when we talk about honoring saints, is that recording on? Yeah, okay, the recording on. So when we talk about the saints and their honor, I think everybody will agree, from no matter from what denomination or from what theological background, everybody will agree that yes, saints should be honored. But when we talk about the way we express that honor, that's where the problem arises. Because for many people, especially means something, not you express something you from your through your body, through your expressions. Yeah. So that's what where the problem arises, because when we do something, when we express this our feeling, this our honor and veneration for our saints and the holy objects, we make some gestures, we have some kind of expressions. When someone, an outsider, when he watches us, he can get confused this kind of veneration with the worship, and therefore because you know that in the Bible God commanded, He gave 10 commandments, and one of the commandment was that you shall not bow down to anything else apart from God, and serve them, especially when the commandment is talking about the idols. So based on that commandment, people avoid making prostration before anything that we consider holy or honorable, yeah, or kissing it. This is also considered as some kind of idolatry. Yeah. So all those things are considered idolatrous because of this one verse. But we will see in this topic is if that is the correct interpretation of that verse, or that is something else. So when we see in the Old Testament, especially, of course we will see it in the New Testament also, but in the Old Testament, the biblical etiquette were completely contrary to Protestant consciousness. Because whenever in the Old Testament of dignity, they expressed their honor and veneration way that can be seen in the can be scandalous for many people nowadays. So we can see to bow oneself to the earth in front of a gate, that means to make a prostration. Example is given in Genesis 18:2. Before a person of high authority or older age, and also before a person of equal dignity, was a common biblical etiquette. Such low bows were made sometimes thrice and sometimes 7 times. Along with low bows, kissing, holding feet, or kissing the ground on which that person is standing were common actions to express one's reverence the feet of. But many of the people from the Protestant backgrounds, they have abandoned this practice, considering this to be arbitrary. But that's not true, because we see that even in the Orthodox Church, when somebody meets a priest or a bishop, the way they express their honor is by touching the ground where the priest is standing or the bishop is standing, and then keeping one hand on keeping one palm on the other palm of the hand and asking for blessing. Yeah. So this is the way. This is the biblical way of showing your respect for another person and getting blessing, which is followed even till today in the Orthodox Church. So if, after when we finish this topic, you can get all those verses from the from. So we see some concrete that are enemies of Jews later in history. Yeah. But because Hittites provided land to Abraham out for those, he twice bowed down to them. It was not like some kind of salute of like police officers do. No, he bowed down to earth in front of Hittites to express his honor for them. Because Jacob was chosen over Esau, because Esau sold his birthright. You know? So this Esau was venerated the same way. That means chosen person of God, and all the brothers of Joseph also bowed down before him. You can see that in the picture there. Joseph is there in Egypt as a prime minister, and all his brothers are bowing down to him, as he himself saw in his dream. 11 stars bowing to him, and sun and the moon also bowing to him, etc. So that came to be that was fulfilled in Egypt. And also the lawgiver himself, Moses, who received commandments from God, the same Moses bowed down low to the earth before his father-in-law and Midian priest Jethro. The lawgiver himself made prostration before the Midian priest. He was not even a Jew, he was an outsider. Then prophet Nathan did the same before King David, one prophet doing to another prophet. In turn, King David did the same to King Saul. Although King Saul was a forsaken man, although he was initially selected by God, but later he was forsaken by God. And still, King David bowed down to this person, calling that person to be chosen person of God. So one king bowing down to another king. So and later we see David himself bowed down to Jonathan, son of King Saul, and in turn Jonathan's sons Mephibosheth bowed down to David. Okay, so all these things we find in the Bible. This picture which you are seeing right now on the screen is the Mephibosheth bowing down to the King David. Then again we see Abigail did the same to David, Bathsheba bowed to David, Adonijah bowed to King Solomon, Solomon bowed down to his mother Bathsheba. There are such many examples in the Bible, not just before Moses, but even during the time of Moses and after the time of Moses, where people expressed their reverence for another human being by making prostration, by bowing down before them. That was a common biblical etiquette. It's not something which is borrowed from pagans. No, that's what the biblical people did. Okay, so that's why expressing their reverence such a way for human beings. Did the patriarchs, prophets, and the other Old Testament saints violate God's commandment or committed idolatry? Of course not. Rather, God Himself made many to bow down before the saints. If you check those references in Genesis, Isaiah, and Revelation, you can find where God is making the enemies or other people bowing down to His own people. So because God, why did the Old Testament saints express their feeling this way, and why did God Himself made other people to bow down to His own? Because they knew what it means. Yeah? They knew what they were. A lot of, even in the Protestant circles, those who oppose this kind of expression, the same Protestant pastors like to call themselves as reverend pastor. And what does the reverend means? Honorable, venerable. Although many pastors, when they use this title reverend, they do not know what that means. But reverend means, so they like themselves to be called honorable, but they do not want they do not want to give that honor to those who are really worthy of that honor. So that's an irony. But that this is the way in the biblical times people used to, the holy people, the saintly people used to express their honor for the other people. Okay, so what we saw here, it is talking about the human to human, even human to an angels, because even in the Old Testament, whenever angels appeared, people bowed down to them. Of course, not to worship, but to venerate. So this carry forward in the topic of icons and the topic of relics, and then we will see, then we'll combine all of them together. So about the icons, we all know that the Orthodox Church venerates the icons, and which also means images. Icon is a Greek word, icon. So the icon of Christ and His saints are greatly venerated in the Orthodox. And as we say, but as soon as we say icon or an image, some people immediately imagine idolatry. But to reach such a conclusion without proper study, any to jump on some conclusion without properly studying is wrong. It's not only about the theology; it's about judging people about anything. So when we look at the Bible, we see that God never forbade making of images. Those who oppose images or icons, citing the second commandment, do so out of ignorance, because they do not know what God is saying there. The second commandment is not an independent commandment, rather it's a continuation of the first one. Remember, these verses and chapters were put very late. They were not there originally. So any passage which you read, it's like freely. There were the chapters and verses, etc., and the titles were put there by later people. That's not what the original autograph contains. Yeah. So even in the commandment, in the 10 commandments, we see the second commandment was not independent commandment. It was given as an extension of the first commandment. And the emphasis of both commandments is the oneness of God, not the images. If you check the both of the commandments, that God is talking about God being one. God talks about being one, hence He forbids adoring anything or anyone besides Him, be it in some sort of visible form, that of creature, imaginary gods, or mythical invisible God. So both are forbidden there. Both things are to keep something at the place of God. That is what is forbidden there. It's not the image is forbidden, but making something into God is forbidden. Because when you call someone God, when you acknowledge someone to be God, what you do, you adore it, you worship it. Yeah. And God is saying there in those commandments that I am the God, I am the Lord. Yeah. You shall not have other gods beside me. What does that mean? You should not worship others. That's what the second commandment is saying. First commandment is saying is that I am the God, you should not have other gods. Second commandment is saying you should not worship anything beside me. So that's what the important part is there. God is forbidding his listeners, his people, worshipping anything else beside him, be it invisible form or be it something invisible force. That's what that verse is talking about. So the second commandment forbids images made for the purpose of adoration. It is not a blanket ban on images. There is a specific purpose which is banned, not the thing which is used for that purpose. Here, there is a difference between making images for a non-adoration purpose and making them for adoration. By the way, I'm using the word adoration instead of worship because that's what there is a confusion between people about what worship means. The word worship originally never meant latria, as you those who are orthodox they know what that means, but that did not mean what we mean as worship today. The word worship in the old times, yeah, in the old English, it only meant some kind of honor. So you can offer worship to humans, to angels, and to God in English language. If we talk about this word worship, but there was another word. It was called adoration, adorate from Latin, which was exclusively used for God. It was not given to humans or angels or anything else. Yeah? It was reserved for God, adoration. While the word worship was a common thing which you can offer to anyone. And that's why uh, if you check some British titles, people say like your worship, pardon me, your worship. I want to say this worship. These are the titles, and people never understood worship in adoration. That's why I'm distinguishing the adoration from worship here. See about ban on images for the purpose of adoration. See the same, so the similar kind of are banned, yet they are allowed to be used in on the internet, which drugs are banned for general use but are allowed to use in the it says this drug is banned or that okay, but they are allowed to be in medicine. The same way God is forbidding their image for worship, for other purpose, for adoration. It is, if you remove the adoration, then it is not banned. Yeah, so like the same way, the drugs, if you are using it for if you are using it for intoxication, for anything else, something else, then it is banned. The same way, the images are banned if you are going to worship them, to adore them. But if you are not going to adore them, then they are not banned. And God Himself supports this by commanding His prophets in the Old Testament to make images. We have seen in the Ten Commandments, God giving commandment not to make images which are in heaven or on earth or under the earth or in the water, whatever. But the same God Himself commands the same prophet, the same Moses, to make images. So if we consider both of those commandments, then we will have and interpret those things without proper context, then we will have to say that God is contradicting Himself. God is like a man, forgetting that He Himself first gave the commandment not to make images, and later He Himself is saying, now make the images. Yeah, but that's not true. Everyone who believes in God, in Christian God, in biblical God, will say that God cannot contradict Himself. God cannot lie. God cannot make mistakes. So it means when God is commanding people to make images, that means what He was commanding in the Ten Commandments was not a blanket ban on images. If that is not so, then God is contradicting. Okay, so that's why we have to keep both of those commandments in our head so that we will get the right answer. Now we see there are a lot of images which God commanded in the Old Testament. Here on the screen you see a passage is quoted from Numbers 21 8 to 9 when the Israelites started murmuring against God. God sent the serpents and they started biting people, and they came to Moses asking for forgiveness and asking so that God will forgive them and heal them. Moses went to God, and what God said, make a bronze serpent. Then the Lord said to Moses, make a snake and mount it on a pole. When everyone who is bitten looks at it, he will live. So Moses made a bronze snake and mounted it on a pole. If anyone who was bitten looked at the bronze serpent, he would recover. Okay, that's what in the Old Testament to the same prophet in the same desert image of snake, and the same image is used by Jesus Christ in John 3:14, comparing himself with that same snake with that same John 3:14. As Moses lifted up the serpent in the wilderness, so must the Son of Man be lifted up, because this serpent in the wilderness was pointing towards Christ, because anyone was saved from. So anyone in the New Testament who will see who are bitten by death, when we will at who is on the cross, one who is Christ himself is equating himself with the image which was made by human hands in the Old Testament. Next, in Exodus 25 18 to 20, what we see, make two cherubim of hammered gold at the end of the mercy seat, one cherub on one end and one on the other, all made from one piece of gold. And the cherubim are to have wings that spread overshadowing the mercy seat. The cherubim are to face one another, looking toward the mercy seat. So recall, God says, don't make image of anything that is in heaven. Now God has himself commanded Moses to make images of cherubim, which are angels in heaven. That means God was not making a blanket statement there. It was not a blanket ban on images. Next, Exodus 26 1, 31, 36, 8, and 35. You are to construct the tabernacle itself with 10 curtains of finely spun linen, each with blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, and cherubim skillfully worked into them. Okay. Again, God is commanding to make images of some of the beings which are in heaven. That means God was not contradicting him because he was not making a blanket statement. In the inner sanctuary, he made two cherubim, each 10 cubits high, out of wood. He also overlaid the cherubim with gold. That's in 1 Kings 6 23 28. Is this in the way Solomon built the temple, that vision was given. So Solomon was not building out of his own imagination. David gave the whole to Solomon. Read the earlier chapters. God himself instructed David how to build the temple, and David gave those instructions to Solomon. And that is why he is building these so-called statues of cherubims in the Holy of Holies. It's not they did not place those images outside of the city walls, but in the most holy place, the Holy of Holies. So in the Holy of Holies, there were 4 statues, 2 on the Ark of the Covenant, and which were very big, covering the whole room of the Holy of Holies. Then he carved the walls all around the temple in both the inner and outer sanctuaries with carved engravings of cherubim, palm trees, and open flowers. Now recall again the commandment: don't make images of the things which are in heaven on and which are on earth. And here God himself commanded to make the images of cherubim which are in heaven and the palm trees and the flowers which are on earth. And you can see that in this image, in this photograph. In 1 Kings 7:25, 24, 2 Chronicles 4:5. The sea stood on 12 oxen, 3 facing north, 3 facing west, 3 facing south, and 3 facing east. Under its brim were gods for 10 cubits, compassing the sea all around. The gods were in 2 rows. Cast it with it a lily blossoms. We know in the desert when Moses went to take the 10 Commandments to receive, people started worshipping the golden calf. And God to make 12 of these 12 statues of bulls were there outside of the temple where God regularly appeared. That means God was not banning images. Later, on the panel between the upright were lions, oxen, and cherubim. On the upright was pedestal above, and below the lions and oxen were wreaths of beveled work. 1 Kings 7 again, because this chapter is describing the things in the temple. So again we see the things which are in heaven and on earth, which God commanded not to make any image of such in the 2nd commandment. But here in the temple, all those images were present of the beings which are in heaven and of the beings which are on earth, lion and bulls and cherubims and flowers. Even the King Solomon, if you see this image, you can see he had a very high throne. What it says about his throne, let's see. The throne had 6 steps and a round top at the back of the throne. There were armrests on both sides of the seat, with a lion standing beside each armrest. 12 lions stood on the 6 steps, one at either end of each step. Nothing like this had ever been made for any kingdom. Now see, the king built the temple according to the instructions he received from his father. They were he make statues for his own throne. So from these examples we see that when God commanded, you shall not make for yourself an idol of any kind or an image of anything in the heaven above or on the earth beneath or in the water below, he didn't mean to ban making of any image, but mean to ban making of image for the purpose of adoring it. And that's what is the important thing, for the purpose of adoring it. This is what was banned. Otherwise he himself wouldn't have commanded to make images in his temple and tabernacle, and with utmost reverence saints would not have bowed down before the temple, which was full of images of earthly things and statues of heavenly cherubims. If you check those references, we can find that. Even in the Psalm, if you read the Psalm, what it says, I will bow down towards your temple. And what was in the temple? The temple was full of images of the beings in heaven and on earth, and of grass and flowers and trees. Apart from the Bible, one of the greatest and most neglected example of image veneration is the veneration of the flag of a country. All Christians around the world, whenever they venerate and salute the flags of their nations, those Christians who at other times object to the veneration of holy images, calling it idol worship, themselves forget their own objection to image veneration and singing songs with utmost reverence honor the flags of their countries, which are made by the hand of man and contain images of animals, vegetation, stars and planets, buildings, etc. And take care that in no way it will be dishonored. If a flag having images of nature and man-made objects, which has no relation to Christ or Christianity, is worthy of veneration, then why not the images or icons which represent God? This is very important. Every people, all Christians, all world, they love their country, they venerate the flag of their country, they salute it. Why do you salute it? That's an expression of your veneration for your country. So if you object to, or if you have an objection to orthodox icon veneration, then you should stop venerating the flags of your country, because you are doing the same thing. Okay. And what we see in the flags, these are some images of the flags. If you just take on Google, there are hundreds of nations around the world, and many of them have stars and moons and suns and birds and animals and trees and leaves on their flags. And all those people who accuse us of idolatry, they themselves, with utmost respect, venerate those images without even thinking twice that they are guilty of the same thing, if they are guilty of which they are accusing others. In this next image you see, there is a very prominent, very famous faith healer, Benny Hinn. All Protestants know him. This faith healer, so-called healer, Benny Hinn, is praying at the western wall in Jerusalem, where the Jews pray. And how do they pray? You can see the next image. That's an ordinary Jew, a common Jew man, kissing the wall, because for them that wall is only the remnant part of the temple. That's what is remaining right now. Nothing else is there. So for them, this is the most holy place on earth, which they can relate to. So they kiss it again and again, and that's what even Benny Hinn did. And John Hagee, so-called powerful evangelical pastor in US, and all those who visit Jerusalem, all those Protestant and Pentecostal and charismatic pastors, or the faithful, they do the same. They love to go to this wall and kiss the wall, write their prayers and put their prayers in that wall, and make their prayers or wishes in front of that wall. At that time, they never think about idolatry. For them, oh, Jews are doing, then that's why we follow this. Okay, the Jews, the same people who rejected Christ, who rejected the Son, and therefore rejected the Father, they like to follow them, but they do not like to follow his own church. That's an irony, but sadly that is the case. Now there is a difference between adoration, which nowadays people call worship, and veneration. There is a difference. Just because something looks similar does not mean that they are one and the same. There is a complete, there is a big difference between them. Yeah? So if you check the Greek Old Testament, which we call LXX, which we denote by this Roman letters LXX, which means 70, the Septuagint, which is called, and the New Testament Greek, yeah, both of the Old and the New Testament, they differentiate between a veneration and adoration. Often it is misunderstood that both are one and the same, but in fact both has a significant difference. Adoration, the worship, which nowadays means adoration, or the service offered to God alone, while veneration means the honor which is given not only to God but also to his saints, our elders and holy objects. So these are two different terms. Adoration, which we nowadays call worship, is offered to God alone, while veneration, that means utmost honor, is given to God, his saints, our elders, holy objects, anything that is related to God, or anything that is worthy of honor. This is what we have seen in the Greek language. In the Bible, Greek word latria is used for worship, while for veneration, proskuneo is used. There are both two different terms, and both are in the Bible, latria and proskuneo. For adoration, the word latria is used, and for veneration, the word proskuneo is used. In the Hebrew Bible, the word shacha or abad are respectively used for veneration and worship, but unlike Greek, Old Testament or the New Testament, the Hebrew has not much distinction between them. Both of these words are used for creator as well as creation. Now, because all of us know that Greek is more sophisticated language. Greek Old Testament and New Testament makes strict distinction, yeah, follow that, and used latria only for worship of God, while proskuneo for all kind of veneration. And this distinction is clear in Matthew 4:10, where it says, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. Yeah? The word for worship there, as I said, this is old English translation. That is why the word worship is there. Okay, and that is why the word worship there is proskuneo. Okay, what is that? What is that in Greek? Kyrion ton theon suproskunesis ke avto monilatriesis. You can see both of those words there. Okay, Kyrion ton theon suproskunesis. It means veneration. In the Old English, it is worship. K and after him mono alone latresis, adore or serve. That is in other translations, because that's what we call, yeah, church service. We say church service. I serve God. Yeah. So the word there is latria. Even the word liturgia is translated as sometimes as serving, ministering. So you can see in the same verse which Jesus is quoting from the Old Testament, he himself uses two different words to signify what is veneration and what is worship. But for sure, veneration is due to God first. So any kind of honor, when we want to offer someone honor, God is the first. It is due to God first, yeah, and then to others. But it is not limited to him alone, yeah, as I said. On the other hand, adoration, that means latria, is due to God alone. You cannot offer adoration or latria to anyone except God. Otherwise, that will be called idolatry. Yeah? What we see here is a quote from Anastasius, Bishop of Theopolis. What he says, how he explains the difference between veneration and worship. He says, we worship, that means proskunomen, we venerate men and holy angels, we do not adore them, latriomen. Okay, what he's saying, we venerate, the word is proskumen, because he's writing in Greek, he's not writing in English. So we venerate men and the holy angels, we do not adore them. Moses says, thou shalt worship, that means venerate, thy God, and him only shalt thou adore. Behold, before the word adore, he puts, but not before the word worship, that means venerate, because it is lawful to worship, that means venerate, creatures, since veneration is only giving special honor, but it is not lawful to adore, nor by any means to give them prayers of adoration. Yeah? So even in the 7th century, Bishop Anastasius is giving us clear distinction, which we find even in the Bible. Yeah, the distinction between veneration and worship. He is also quoting the same verse from Matthew. Yeah. So Christ himself is using this word. He is saying that worship God alone. What we saw here in Greek. After monolatriesis. Yeah. Mono. alone, him alone worship. But he did not say him alone venerate. He said venerate God, venerate the Lord your God, but adore him only. That's what we see. Even Christ is making distinction between veneration and adore. So we know how to differentiate between adoration and veneration. To adore God alone, but to offer honor of veneration, that means proskunesis. Another word is dulia, to the saints, angels, martyrs, righteous, as his faithful servants and friends, and follow the example of King David, who says, "Thy friends, O God, have been greatly honored by me." You can find this verse only in Septuagint, not in the Hebrew Bible, because a lot of things have changed there in the Hebrew text. So if you check the Psalm 139:17 in Septuagint, you will find David saying, "Thy friends, O God, have been greatly honored by me." Okay, why? Because they are God's saints. Here they are God's friends. That is why they are greatly honored. Whom Lord called his friends and children, in whom he is glorified, them do we honor and venerate, but adore God alone, who alone is worthy of it. Okay, so why we venerate the saints? Because they are his friends, as David says. Yeah, and they are as even Jesus says in John 15, they are his friends, they are his children, and God is glorified in them. That is why we honor them, we venerate them, but we do not adore them, we adore God alone. Even in the worldly life, we highly honor human dignitaries and people related to them. Why not then who are closely related to God? Yeah? In everyday life, we can see if you meet some, if the prime minister appears before you, what will if you are sitting, you will stand right at that moment out of honor, yeah, and you will take the posture which you think is a better way to express your reverence before him. You will not stand as you wish, but you will stand in reverence before a human authority. Yeah? If you meet prime minister's mother, you will do the same, because you will say, "Oh, this is prime minister's mother. Oh, this is prime minister's friend. Oh, this is prime minister's brother," and because of that relation, you will offer them veneration. You will honor them. Why? Because they are related to prime minister. That is why the same way we honor the saints, because they are related to God. They represent God. Whenever in the old time, even today, kings used to send ambassadors. Even today, every country has their ambassadors in different countries. What the role of ambassador is to represent that country to the country he is living. Yeah? So the ambassador is called is Your Excellency. Why can't we say hello Mr. XYZ? No, we call him Your Excellency. Yeah? to the ambassadors, because he is representing your nation. He is making present your government there. So any disrespect to the ambassador is disrespect to that nation. And that is what happens when there are bad relations between the two countries. What we do, we expel. First of all, we call the ambassador to our government office and tell them this is wrong, etc. We don't like this. Tell to your government. But even if they don't change something, then we expel the ambassador from our country. Yeah, why? Because doing so, we show our expression towards that country and that government. Okay, that ambassador might not be guilty for the actions of his country, but we do so to show that what we are doing here by in the representation of that ambassador, we are protesting the country itself. The same way, when we honor the ambassador, we are honoring that country, we are honoring that government of that country. Yeah. So when we honor saints, we are honoring God. The ultimate receiver of honor or veneration is God himself. We honor, we venerate saints not because of the saints themselves, but because of God, who is the source of holiness, who is the source of glory. It is because of God that those saints became saints. Yeah, and because of Him, because of His mercy and grace, they are His friends and His children, and that is why we honor them. Now, in this diagram, a small attempt has been made to show the distinction between veneration and worship. Okay, so this bigger circle is God. Let's consider this bigger circle is God, and that inner smaller circle is creation, be it saints, be it icons, be it relics or angels, anything apart from God. Okay, that is that small circle, and those vertical lines represent veneration and horizontal lines represent worship. And where the lines are crossed, it means at that place veneration and worship both are offered. So if you see in the smaller circle, the inner circle, which is saints, icons, relics and creation, it has only vertical lines. That means they deserve only veneration, they deserve our worship, our honor, they deserve our veneration, only veneration. Okay, but if you go out of that circle, inside the bigger circle, you will find the vertical and the horizontal lines, both of the lines are there. That means what? God is worthy of worship, that means sorry, veneration plus adoration. Veneration is for veneration is to saints we are giving only veneration, but to God we are giving veneration plus adoration both. That is the difference. That is the difference I am trying to show this through these two circles. Okay, so the vertical lines are only veneration, the horizontal lines are worship or adoration, and that is why we see in the inner circle only vertical line. It means we offer veneration to saints, icons and relics and angels, etc. Only veneration, but to God we offer worship and veneration both. So the concept I think must be clear by now, that about the distinction between veneration and adoration. Now let's see, we have already seen about the icons or images in the Old Testament and how God himself approved and commanded the use of those images, icons in his own temple. So the commander and the approver was God himself, yeah, in the Old Testament. And we have seen that God did not ban the making of images, he banned only their worship or adoration, not the images themselves. And following the same trait of the Old Testament, we find the same thing in the New Testament time also. So in this slide you see there is a church lying in ruin. The church is famous among especially among the Christian archaeologists because it's of very high importance. The church is found in Syria and is from the about the 3rd century. Okay, it's 235 AD. It's more like second and third second century. So middle of the 2nd century we find, but and this is the date of its destruction. It's not the date of its construction. And the church is called as Dura Europas. You can find a lot of information about it on internet. But still here, for saving time, I am giving in short. So this church is still existing in Syria, although a lot of a lot of it is destroyed. Still, you can find the church in Syria. And there are some images, some icons found from this church, from the ruins of this church. First image you can see here. You can see, I hope you can see. Yeah. There is a woman standing and there is a well and she is pulling water from the well and her head is a little tilted. and some kind of being is here. The image is very ancient, almost 2000 years. That is why the image is not so clear, but you can see, and woman is one woman is holding well is here, and her head is little smaller. The archaeologists thought no, sorry, this is the woman at the well when this is, but they wrong. I'll tell you later how. Now this is what do you find in the image? You see there, one man is lying on the bed, another man is taking his bed, is standing and making some direction. Some of you might already guess what this represents. This is from the when the was low word that Christ would heal him. Yeah, and Christ told him, "Get up and take your bed and walk." This is what that episode next. And all these images are from the same church. Here you can see the sea, and in the sea, and there are some people on board. One man is in the sea, and another man already half destroyed. And we can see, if you can see my cursor, you will see one man is standing here at the corner, holding the hand of another man. See, this is an episode from when Christ performed the miracle of multiple bread and fishes. He asked his disciples to go in the boat, and at late night he arrived. He came, remember that, and then he asked Peter to walk on the water, and Peter walked, and then he saw the water and the wind. He started drowning, and Christ gave his hand and saved him. This is what this picture, this icon is talking about. Next, very damaged, very ancient. That is why it's not so clear. But you can see, if you can see my cursor,